Hey Deep Chatters, I'm Leah Morris here with my co-host Jennifer Butler, and this is Deep Chats Podcast, where we have raw discussions about real life. Each week you can expect unfiltered, no BS conversations from the heart about topics that actually might matter to you. We're just a couple of relationship coaches who want to cut through the small talk and dive deeper. So thanks for joining us on this journey, and be sure to subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. Hey Deep Chatters, I am really excited today because this is actually it's a different kind of episode, I guess you could say. It's just Jenn and I today, but we're going to be diving into the topic of truth. And we're going to be diving into it with the context being around Jenn's personal story. I think, if you've listened to any of our prior episodes, you'll know that Jenn and I have a common thread of going through divorce and finding our way in this space of personal development and eventually to coaching. Divorce has changed our lives. It's the biggest catalyst for what we've become today. And I think a driving factor to a lot of the ways that we operate still. It's just such a big learning piece for the both of us. And we're always trying to keep growing. And I know that talking about this sort of thing isn't something that I've always been comfortable with at all, especially when it comes to my own personal story. And that goes the same, for Jenn. And so I think today we've decided is the day that you want to be more transparent about some of the things that you've experienced and are experiencing. So Jenn, I'll just kind of hand the mic over to you and let you explain.
Yeah, well, thank you, first of all, for that, for what you said, and for doing this with me. And I guess just to start, exactly what Leah said, this episode's really about truth. And I'm going to share my story in an effort to be more transparent with my community. It's part of a commitment I've made to myself. A long time ago, I made that commitment to myself, but it's like an onion, right? It's like the layers need to peel back before you realize, oh, okay, here's somewhere I'm not being transparent. And so that's where I'm at today. But I think what I really hope to inspire today is just how important it is to be in your truth, and how being in your truth actually is what allows you to kind of free yourself. I think sometimes we can think that we're keeping ourselves safe by staying small or by being quiet or being silent, right? It's like if I'm just silent, then I'm protecting myself and I'm keeping myself safe. And what I've learned and what I'm going to share with you is that it's the direct opposite. We have to be in our truth really, really big and loud so that we can keep ourselves safe. Mm-hmm. And I mean that in general, but especially as women, right? So, so I guess I'll just kind of jump into it and then we can just chat. So most of my audience knows, I'm sure all of my audience knows that, and I'm sure Deep Chatters know, I've gone through a divorce. And most of the details are very transparent about that. I'm very open about my life, the way I showed up in my life and the mistakes that I've made. There's a piece of my story that I have not shared and I've kept very protected and very hidden for many reasons, and I'll share that. So the part of my story, and I'm going to be very intentional about really speaking from my perspective, because this is not about my ex, and this is not about him being anything other than a human being. This is just my life journey alongside somebody who has exhibited mental illness, and I have been on the side of that, trying to co-parent and navigate through a relationship dynamic with. So I guess I can say that partially through my marriage, things started to kind of seem off. You know, it's interesting whenever a client comes to me around narcissism, and I don't know if this is something you experience too, but most women, when they come, say, I didn't even realize it until I was out. And that was my experience. Like, I knew there was something off. I knew I didn't feel good in the relationship. I did a lot of blaming myself, trying to be better, trying to fix myself, trying to like fix things. But it wasn't until probably like a year or two after we separated that I was reading Melanie Tonya Evans. She is this amazing thought leader on narcissism. And I found her and I was reading, and I just was like, oh my God, how did I not know? Like, how did I not see this? We both fit every dynamic of that, every characteristic of that. And I fit the side of the empath who completely abandoned herself, who, you know, had, my self-worth was so low and so just gone that it was like this perfect fit, right? So I figured it out after, and I started to do a lot of healing around it and a lot of work on understanding myself and healing the parts of myself so that I never, ever, ever, ever recreate that again. And so over the years, that narcissism seems to have exacerbated in different ways, and into whatever is sort of going on for him. I'm not going to diagnose him. I just know that for me, it has been about 6 years now or 5 years now of just kind of relentless harassment and stalking, and bullying, I guess, is really how it feels. And so for my...
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
Sorry, I don't want you to lose your train of thought. I think that so the fact that you figured out a name for this really 2 to 3 years after your separation, and then you started healing. I wanted to touch on that because I know for me that the naming of it was the match that started the fire in me. And I don't know if it's the same for you. It seems like it, but I remember being handed a book by somebody after I was separated too. And it was same sort of thing. I was reading all these things and it was like, wow, now that I have names for it and I know that I'm not alone, because like there's a name for it for a reason. It's because so many people have experienced it, because people have studied it, they've named it. That means there's also, it kind of made it tangible and not so like confusing anymore. Like maybe this is just me. Was that the same for you?
Yeah, it's like, oh my God, I'm not crazy. Like, I'm not crazy. Everything I was feeling isn't because I'm broken or there's something inherently wrong with me, right? It's like, I wasn't failing or unlovable or whatever, all those stories that go on in your head. And I think the naming of it also allowed me to stop expecting him to show up as a regular, like as somebody who doesn't exhibit those signs. And because I remember like I would get so frustrated and angry and hurt because he wasn't showing up the way I expected him to or wanted him to or wished I could control him into. And when I was able to name it, I could let go of that and be like, I need to stop expecting him to be somebody he's not, because that's not he is who he is.
Mm.
If I continue to expect him to be somebody he's not, that's just me beating myself up, right? That's just me holding myself hostage, and creating my own turmoil, right? And so it was like a moment like that I was able to really take my power back in a sense and be like, whoa, right? Like, this is what I have control over, right? The truth of the matter and the way that I learn how to respond and relate to it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the only reason why I want to like tease that out of what you're saying is because I think it really goes in line with standing and being loud and big in our truth.
Yeah.
Like, it's not only for us, but that anybody whose ears it falls on, when truth gets spoken, it heals all of those who hear it.
Right.
And so I think that the fact that people, you know, Melanie Tonya Evans wrote that book, and the book that I read, that was a proclamation of, you know, many people's truths who were able to speak their truths, and in so doing helped us define our truth. So I just wanted to kind of full circle that a little bit.
Yeah, no, and I love that you went there, because even though that happened for me, I still stayed silent, right? I still kept it to myself and probably just the, you know, a few close people. I stayed silent, and I just kind of tried to exist around it. Kind of like when you have like a hurt shoulder and you learn to compensate, and you just, that hurt shoulder's there. You make sure you never touch it. You really never use it. You just kind of cater and baby it and hope that eventually it'll just feel better and or go away, right? Mm-hmm. That's kind of how I treated it. And I think if I'm really being honest, there's a few reasons that I treated it that way. I think I was ashamed. I think I was afraid of what other people would judge me to be. I also have a son, and this is his father, and there is a protective quality. I don't ever want there to be a like that title of, you know, him being labeled, right? Like I think there's that protective piece as well. There's the piece too for me that like, yes, it happened, and this is my truth, and I don't identify as the victim of narcissism, right? It's like, yes, that is an experience that I had. But if I continue to make it about him, then I'm like claiming that title, right? Like I'm like investing in that. And I don't want to invest in that. I want to invest in that I'm this empowered woman who has had experiences that have made her grow and become and evolve and all of that. So there's all those reasons that I didn't speak out and stayed so quiet and so silent and so hidden about it. And also, I think there was a part of me that thought, if I could just love and think good thoughts and put out good and help others and be good in the world, it'll go away. And it didn't. Over the years, it got worse and worse and escalated and worse and escalated more. And when I tell you that it got to the point where when I tried to get help, not only police officers, but like district attorneys, women district attorneys advised me over and over and over again to hide. So you should just leave, take your son, change your name, and you both need to just go into hiding because he's never going to stop. Like it was like person after person after person. And when I tell you that there was a moment where I considered it, I mean, it was just, it was like an awakening, because I was actually considering getting so small and so silent that I was going to make myself and my son completely invisible.
Wow.
And
Not
that
just small, but invisible.
No, invisible. Invisible. And I was going to make that choice to make myself invisible. Right. And I want to say that again, because I'm not saying he was making me have to be invisible. I was about to make the choice to make myself invisible. And everything just kind of went like, wow, right? Like, this is how I've been sourcing my own story and recreating this over and over and over. Because I remember moments like being on the phone with friends or sitting there with God and being like, what am I doing wrong? Why am I being punished? What do I have to do to make this better? Like, just kind of feeling like it was my fault, and like, why won't this stop? And I started to ask better questions. How am I co-creating this? How am I narrating this? If this is my life and my story, and I have the pen, how am I writing this into my life? Yeah. And that's when I realized, by being silent, by not speaking out, and by being so quiet and silent, that I was already making myself invisible.
I think that that's the difference between asking questions from a disempowered perspective and then asking the courageous questions that actually take personal accountability for the life that we have. And in that personal accountability comes the empowerment, but it's so hard to arrive there, because even if you don't identify as a victim, like that was part of something that happened, there's still like this phase of disentangling yourself from that experience fully, and and being able to say like, okay, I fully chose that too, right. And also I'm fully choosing this, so how can I choose differently? How can I be? And you talk about choice all the time, so I love that, asking yourself that question of how am I co-creating is essentially like, how am I choosing this too?
Yeah. And believe me, it's not an easy question to answer when you're like on the receiving end of really bad behavior, right? So I get it. Like, anyone who's listening who's been a victim of anything abusive or anything like that, I get it. It's not an easy question to answer, because there's somebody outside of you, definitely doing things that don't feel good and are not right. But it's still like, we're all the creator, right? We're all the creator of our stories. And so how am I choosing into this? How am I narrating this? And for me, it was, I'm staying silent. I'm not using my voice. For every single woman who has been told, and I know I'm not the only one, right? If I were told it that many times to just go hide, can you imagine how many women are told to go hide, and how many women do? Because they don't have the ability to use their voice. And so how can I live, right? Like, how can I do that? And so for me, it was this awakening, like, oh my God, for me to re-script this story, I need to like speak out. I need to be transparent, and I need to not only do this to heal myself, but to heal for every woman in this world who is being silent, who is hiding, right? Like, we heal each other. So this isn't just for me, right? It's for anyone now experiencing, anyone in the past or generations to come. Like, I am rewriting my script here and being completely transparent about what it's like to go through a situation like this, and do the work so that, like, yeah, this is happening. It's still happening. You know, I'm still in courts. There's still police involvement. There's still, you know, I went on a walk last week and there were reasons that I knew that, you know, I was safe. And it was the first time I'd had a walk in a really long time where I didn't have to like kind of look around and just be extra aware. And I realized, wow, like the toll that takes to be hyper vigilant all the time. Right. And so, yes, that is a part of the day-to-day that I live, and just a part of it. Right. Because I'm not defined by that. What I define myself as is somebody who uses every experience in my life to empower myself, to grow myself, to show up in a really like truthful and like happy, right? Like I can honestly say, yeah, this is happening, but gotta get happier every day. Right? Like,
Yeah, and I think it's so good to hear that that small part of your reality day to day is or has been filled with some worry.
mm-hmm.
Am I going to be found? Because I think that I mean, I remember for myself when I was coming through and out of that, and sort of into like how to stand on my own 2 feet, I only wanted to be focused on the light. And I was for the most part, but I can't tell you that a single day went by, at least for the first year or two, maybe like year and a half or something, where I was constantly head on a swivel. You know, is there someone behind me? How much information am I giving out? All these little things that we don't really talk about, that I know so many women who have come out of narcissistic marriages or relationships could potentially be worrying about, and are afraid to actually say, like, this is part of my day.
Yeah.
And I'm working through it and I'm stronger than it. But 100% it's something I'm dealing with. I think it's important to hear that, because I think people look at you and they look at me too, I'm sure, but they think she didn't have to deal with this stuff.
Exactly.
She doesn't actually know what it's like to actually like be dealing with this stuff, but you do, and you are, and you're not being defined by it still.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why, you know, I'm always saying and writing, and like, if I can do this, right? If I can consciously go through this whole thing around divorce and co-parenting and all of that, solo parenting, if I can do it, anybody can, right? Because I'm still dealing with it, right? It's been, if all in all, it's been 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I guess like what my, like, if you were to look at my life and say, okay, well, what is that like an example of? And it's just the truth of whatever's happening outside of you is just details, right? Like everyone has details. We all have lives that they all are colored with all these details. Some of those details are really awesome. Some of them are really painful. Some of them are a little scary. Some of them are challenging. Some of them, right? We have all these details. I have details, right? They're coloring my world. But none of that has the power to affect who I am and how I show up every single day, right? Like, I don't ever want to have to rely on the outside details to be my best self. And I speak that so much because I live it. And it wasn't, don't get me wrong, it wasn't easy getting here. I had a lot of feeling very victimized, feeling very powerless, feeling like I had no control, and how would I ever have control of it? And when would I ever be able to be happy when somebody is coming at me constantly? And I was in that story. So I get it. I get how like impossible it feels. And then I also know that it's not impossible.
Mm-hmm. And so how does now being in the place that you are and really being able to speak out about this, and how does that come about? Like what do you want to say?
Yeah, and it's not easy. There's still a little like, it's vulnerable, right? There's a lot of vulnerability in doing this. There's a little bit of fear around the repercussions of it. But at the end of the day, I decide what I'm available for, right? And I am available for love. I'm available for peace, calm, abundance, freedom, joy. That's what I make myself available for. I'm available to inspire, to use my voice, to empower women, to help women empower women. That's what I'm available for. I'm not available for being bullied or scared or any of the stuff, intimidated. I'm not available for that anymore. And I don't say that lightly. It's a conscious choice. A couple of weeks ago, there was an incident that happened and it shook me. I was absolutely shaken. And in that moment, literally shaken, I had to get to work because I'm committed to being available for only those things I just said. And so I did my work, got out my journal. I got out the sage. I put on the music. I cried. I meditated. I think I screamed a little bit. Like, I think I like hit my pillow to get some of that anger out. And I stayed in that practice until I was able to resonate at that level of, I am only available for peace and calm and freedom and love, right? Like, so it's not like you like fix it and you're forever. Like, it's work, but I guess at some point I decided that standing up for myself and like the best part of myself and being in my truth and who I am, that nothing was ever going to stand in the way of me standing up for me. And so I guess the biggest thing is, really, first of all, how can I tell people to use their voice if I'm not using mine? Right? How can I tell people to live in their truth if I'm not living in mine? How can I tell my son to be vulnerable and as a man to be willing to, not hide the quote unquote bad things, right? And to be proud of who he is and to be proud of his family. And I continue to tell him to be proud of who his father is and the love that his father has in his heart, and to always find the good, right? How can I do that if I'm not doing that? And so I guess the biggest thing is like, I think it comes down to what I said at the beginning about really the importance of being in your truth and this safety issue. I think as women, we really think that if we just stay quiet and we don't get too loud and we don't get too big, we don't wear the flashy thing to attract attention, right? Like, we just really, that we're safe. We're safer that way. And I'm calling bullshit. It's bullshit. It's actually a way that I think we've been like programmed to think we're safe. We're not. We need to get loud. We need to get loud with each other, arm in arm, and like link arms and be like, hell no, this is my story. this is what I've lived through. I know I'm not the only one. And I know I have a circle of sisters that are going to help hold me up. And we're going to just kind of like, you know, be big together.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Oof, that silencing it's so real.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember when I first started speaking out and first started writing about things that had happened to me, I would get emails from my ex-husband. You better take that down. You're making me look this way and this way.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom even like, maybe you're being too dramatic, you know? And my friends even like, I can't believe she's sharing that. It's so like, it's too much emotion, too much. She's trying to play the victim. And there's so much negativity around actually sharing a story about what happened to you that most people just don't. There's a fear of being cast out.
Yep.
And not belonging and seeming like maybe people won't want to be near me or won't want to open up to me or won't want to trust me because I am sharing. And that definitely does happen. Like people definitely do back away from you. People do cut you out and people do want to keep silencing you and they will shame you for speaking out. This isn't where we're supposed to stop though. Right. And I firmly believe that this is just a shedding, like again, of the people that were benefiting from our silence. Right. I think that when we actually do speak out and people have a problem with that, it's because they want us to stay quiet for their own personal reasons. Mm-hmm. It's not in our best interest, you know, and I mean, maybe taking the example that you had of like the police departments and people saying like, you should go hide. Yeah. You should hide. Of course, that's not in their best interest, but it's definitely not in your best interest. Right. You know, it might be the easier route because then they don't have to deal with the complaints mm-hmm. or anything like that. But what kind of a life is that? Right. To be somebody who is, when you're in hiding, you're not living. And that goes for every area of your life, whether or not you've been abused by anyone or not. Like if you're staying small and if you're hiding what's true for you, and if you are telling yourself that you're not good enough to share and and you're living in fear, and so you're staying quiet about things that you really want to just scream from the rooftops, you're living half a life. Yep. So even in these like really heavy negative truths, because there are definitely bright, positive, beautiful truths too, but even in these negative, heavier truths, it's important that we don't hide mm-hmm. still and let those people fall away. Let those, you know, voices, let the people who are telling you to be silent, be silenced. Right. Right. Yes. Exactly. And that is how we silence them, right? By using our voice and saying no more. Mm-hmm. Right. Like, yeah, I mean, if I had gone into hiding, that's not living, but really I was already living in hiding. Yeah. Right. I already was cutting off like energy flow and life force from my life. Mm-hmm. Right. And so not as drastically as if I had literally gone to hide, but still I was. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, there's something what I'm learning is like Brene Brown is wonderful, always has been. And now like the more I kind of grow into myself and into my life, she's, you know, just, I'm in awe of her. Bravo to her, because
she's really onto something. Like the more that you can literally walk into the things that make you feel so vulnerable and so raw and so exposed, the more you can be like, okay, God, that's going to be really, really hard and like terrifying and exposing. And I am going to feel that vulnerability hangover after I do it, like till next week. The more you can just do it and go for it, it's like freedom, like it's like it's just all these layers peel off. And I'm not saying it's easy, you know, like you said, people fall away, people judge, people will say things. I'm sure I will get some kickback for this. And that's okay. It's okay. Because this is my truth. And honestly, you know, it's not my business how it lands on other people.
Yes.
You know, that's not my business. My business is that I just keep showing up in alignment and in integrity with who I am and who I like aspire to be and who I like kind of talk about and teach about.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really important too, it is the allowing of others to take responsibility for their own feelings and to not constantly be taking that on, being afraid of how you're going to be received when you share your truth. I'm going to allow myself to have my truth. You can have yours.
Yeah.
And that is such a healthy way to really view all of this. It's not a finger pointing. It's a full embodiment, you know, of each person.
Yeah.
So how do you feel? Oh, go ahead.
Well, as I say, which is really so important, especially when you're dealing in dynamics like this, exactly what you said, because I think too, you get really caught up in, like, especially when you realize you're in some sort of like toxic dynamic with someone who's personality disordered or whatever, you get really caught up in trying in being like, well, this is why, right? And this is the truth, but this is actually what's happening. And this is the reason. And exactly what you said. This is my truth. This is not my ex's truth. If you asked him, his truth is completely different, right? Because he's coming from a completely different perspective. And I think when we can let go of that and just stand in, this is my truth, right? And like, it's going to land on people in different ways. Some people are going to have a completely different truth that contrasts mine. The only thing I can do is continue to be, you know, in my voice and in integrity. It has to be about ourselves and not about convincing or getting approval from others or getting other people. And I used to hear it in my voice. I would hear the way I spoke to people, almost like the tilt in my voice, that little tilt. Do you approve of me? Is this okay? Yeah. Is this okay? Do you approve? Am I right? Do you agree? Right. And then once I got that, like that nod of approval, then I was really empowered to speak my voice. But I would start with that, is this okay? Right? Like, no more. It's okay because it's my truth.
Yeah, period.
Period.
Not question mark.
Period.
Yeah.
It's okay, damn it.
Yeah, exactly.
So
how does that feel now? Because I know this has been a like slow and steady transition to where you are now, but I know also a couple weeks ago that, you know, it's the thing that really like had you shaken up just kind of snapped you into like, wait a minute, you know, I need to change the way that I'm seeing this all. How does it feel now to be on this other side of that?
Yeah, it's been a slow and steady. Gosh, I think we've been talking about this for a couple months now, right? About doing this. Yeah. And it's taken me a while to really get to the place where I'm like, no, now's the time. there's a mixture of feelings. There's a sense of freedom, a sense of excitement. I'm so excited to be able to like look my community in the eye, look like, you know, the people who invest their time in reading my posts and asking me questions and things like that, to be able to really be like, this is me, like full transparency. Here I am. You get all of me, right? You get all of me now. And I'm sorry for hiding it, right? Like, you know, it's like I did as, what is it, Maya Angelou, you know, you, when you know better, do better, right? Like I was doing as well as I knew to do, but then I knew better. And so now I'm doing better. You know, and the way I make up for that is to make my amends and to continue to show up better and be fully transparent. So I hope it makes me more available as far as just people feeling, women feeling safe, women feeling understood, women feeling like they're not alone. Like there isn't this place that you get to where you look at like a coach or somebody or someone who seems like they have it all together or they've, you know, gotten through it. You know, we're just like everybody else. And so I get it. I'm in it, right? I'm in it alongside of you. And I think that's kind of the thing too. I think being trained as a therapist and a coach, there's almost like this training, like, I don't know, like a separation, right? It's like, you're the coach over here and you have to maintain a certain presence and a certain aura and a certain, and I bought into that for a while. And I'm calling bullshit on that one too. Like it just, I'm over it, right? Like I want to be in the mud with my clients, right? Like I want to be in there with them, like deep in there, in the nitty gritty, because I get it, right? And I can handle the muck. I don't need to sit over here like on this floating cushion, like I'm some evolved spirit. Like, no, right? Like I have my screw you moments where I'm screaming into pillows and kicking and screaming, you know, just like everybody else. So I'm really working to break down that thing. I don't even know what you call it, that dynamic, that coach client dynamic, and really just showing up as like, this is who I am. You know, I know a couple things because I've lived them. I can show you the way, I can show you a way if it resonates with you. But yeah, like I get to just, you know, just share fully.
Yeah, that's so freeing. You said
Mm-hmm.
there's one side of you that does feel free, and then there's another side that
There's a little like, oh my gosh, right? Like, you know, what is the backlash going to be as far as, you know, am I going to go click over to my email and see a bombardment of emails? But just a little bit, you know, even as I say it, I'm like, and so what? And so what? You know why? Because I'm not available for that. Right? My favorite so my coach, you know, gave me like the line from when we were kids, you know, like, I'm rubber, you're glue. Whatever you say or do bounces off of me and sticks to you. And I got to tell you that I must say that. And I sing it and I dance it because I'm like, you can keep coming at me. And no matter what you do to me, it's going to bounce off me and it's just going to stick right to you because I got me. I'm good. I got me. So send the emails. Do what you got to do, but it's just going to bounce right back onto you because I'm not available to receive it at all. At all. So yeah, I know.
Oh my God. I'm like, what? That was that's the message.
Yeah.
Why did we forget about that? Why did we move so far away from that? But it's actually like pretty profound when you think about it.
It's so true. Because if you're not available to receive it, it has nowhere to go. Yeah. It has nowhere to go. Yeah. So, I mean, I still get, you know, like I said, it's still happening, right? So I'm still being stalked, all of that stuff. and stuff comes in, and I sing my little song. Well, I'm rubber, you're glue,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you so much for being in your integrity, and in that, giving whoever is listening a little more permission to be in theirs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know that you have some very valid reasons to have been silent. I don't want to minimize that. I think that your specific situation is one that needed to be dealt with gently, and to be able to have you arrive where you are is amazing. But there, any sooner over time may not have been great either.
Yeah, and we should say that. Look, I'm not advocating if you need to be quiet to stay safe, like literally physically safe. You know what's best for you, right? This is more talking on a kind of breaking down patterns and
Yeah.
that level, right? But you're exactly right. 2 years ago, even a year ago, even when, and I have to thank you, because you're really the reason that I even came to think about doing this in the first place. So, you gave me the courage and the perspective that I needed to step out of that and to do this. But you're right. A year ago, it would not have been quote unquote safe for me to even do this. Right. And so if you're listening, obviously take into the details of your situation and be very conscious and aware of what you need to do to protect yourself and your family. But if you're past that point and you're still staying silent just because you hope it's going to go away, or because you think that's keeping you safe and that's going to be better, then it might be the time to just start kind of asking the questions and seeing where you can come forth.
Yeah. Yeah. And just in closing, like when you say coming forth, like obviously not everyone has a podcast or an Instagram account where they can write about it. How can people begin to stop being silent in other ways?
Sometimes it's like, I think there's women who their best friend doesn't even know.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, even lower than that, like even closer than that, stand in front of the mirror and tell yourself, I see you and I see everything that you've gone through. I am not going to ignore it or deny it or silence it anymore. You have been through hell. And look yourself in the eyes and be present to yourself and what you've gone through, and start there. Like just own it in the mirror and love yourself for every single thing that you've survived, and give yourself permission to like go where you need to go next and then next and then next. But just start where you are and see where you can come forth, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's perfect advice. And it does start with that very intimate recognition of yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, talking about it with family, even like hiring a coach or a therapist so you can talk about it there. Getting some podcasts going where you can listen more about it, but that initial naming of the truth is the biggest part, and then your voice can start becoming louder and louder in its time. But on that note, do you have any parting words? Or
no, I mean, I guess the only parting word I would have is that, like, if you are a woman who is navigating this sort of dynamic, especially if you're co-parenting in this sort of dynamic, I think sometimes the tendency is, well, it's never going to happen because I'm dealing with somebody who's so high conflict. And I just encourage you to change that narrative in your head, call bullshit on yourself, because the deeper truth is that if you're dealing in a situation like this, it is even a million times more important that you get to the place where you are relating to that situation so far outside of yourself that it has no ability to trigger you or poke you somewhere that you're tender and wounded. So it is possible, and it is, I'll say it, my ex is my biggest gift, and I'm grateful for him every day, because I would never have reached the depths of my soul that I have as a result of what I've navigated through, and in what I consider a very beautiful way. So that's available for everybody. I'm not special.
Yeah. Oh, so proud of you, Jenn. So proud to be having this podcast with you, and to have met you, and to just, be standing alongside of someone who's not afraid to continue to stand taller and speak louder and be bigger. So, yeah, on that note, I think that's all we have. I think I'd like to include, again, the Melanie Tonya Evans book, as well as the book that I initially read. It's called Psychopath Free. And I'm going to put links for that in the show notes. Otherwise, we will catch everyone next time. And please reach out if you need any support or have any questions for us on this topic. But until next time, take care of yourselves, Deep Chatters.
To all you Deep Chatters out there, Leah and I want to thank you so much for listening. This is a podcast that's all about connection, so we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us on Instagram at Deep Chats Podcast. And if you haven't already, please go to iTunes to rate and review us. Every review helps other Deep Chatters just like you be able to find this podcast.